So today is, as a convener, I'm hosting the last meeting for this year. And I'm glad to announce that on the 6th of April, we'll be having the AGM. And we've done with the AGM today. And the AGM will be held at Goldfinch. And I hope everybody will be present. Kohinoor is not available. That's why I did the honors for Kohinoor today. And we are indeed very fortunate to have with us CA Abhijit Sansgiri. He's a very prolific speaker on audit matters and related topics. So there's a quote which I had from Michael Piazza. He says that audit findings are easy to come up with. But it's very easy to come up with audit findings. But a successful change from a finding is the true value of the audit, right? So we do the findings and we just go away, but we should ensure that at least some change is brought about with the positive change is brought about with whatever findings we have. And Abhijit sir is here with us and he'll be giving us a checklist on all the audit findings and all. Now to give a formal introduction, I call upon CA Mahesh Dedia ji.
Thank you, Convener Madam, for giving me this opportunity. Bear with me with my bad throat. We have today CA Abhijit Sansgiri, who will be guiding us on a statutory bank audit and will be also sharing his checklist and the way to proceed. Key points. CA Sansgiri is undoubtedly a CA, but also an LLB with over 35 years of post-qualification experience. He has more than 25 years of speaking experience too. He is a member of AASB and has spoken on essays on various platforms, including recording of videos by ICAI. He has held as a CFO, CAE position in the industry. He has also spoken at CAG, IIM, and also at various parts of CS institutes. Apart from corporate trainings, which he regularly takes up. Currently, he is a president of Professional Speakers Association of India, Mumbai chapter. With this short briefing, I welcome CA Abhijit Sansgiri to this project. We have now request CA Bagheria sir and NMG sir to give a token of a small gift as a token of love and affection from JB Nagar Study Circle. So nice is yours.
Morning. Morning. JB Nagar Study Circle for inviting me, giving me an opportunity to share my views. And it's a different topic that they've selected. It's a checklist for bank branch audit. And it left me wondering what I should see on a checklist. So first, what is a checklist? And why should one have a checklist in the first instance? And a checklist would not just apply to a bank branch audit. It could apply to any audit which we are doing. So foremost, a checklist is a standardized template, a list of items which you need to do so that you don't miss out on anything. And in an audit, we always carry a risk that we may miss out on some items which may vitiate the true and fair view of the financial statements. So any checklist that needs to be drawn has to be drawn having the end goal in mind. And what is the end goal is what is the purpose we conduct an audit for? And that audit could be a bank branch audit. We'll talk with reference to a bank branch audit, but this would apply to any audits that we do. Statutory audits, where we give an assurance on the financial statement, on the historical financial information. So what exactly do we do in an audit? What do we do in an audit? We give an assurance. Yes, I think the word we give a reasonable assurance. We give a reasonable assurance that the financial statements give a true and fair view and are free from material misstatements. So there are two very important words there, material and misstatements. So one needs to know what is a misstatement and what is materiality. And our standards of auditing defines both of them. Materiality, SA 320, misstatement, SA 450. And again, in the general essay, the definitions are all there. So misstatement is defined very broadly as something which, if not done or incorrectly done, would impact the decision of a stakeholder who's using the financial statements to take a decision. It could be an investor, it could be an employee, it could be a supplier, it could be a banker, it could be a regulator, it could be even a chartered accountant. So anything which is stated as true and fair and is not true and fair, which is what the risk is that the financial statements may contain errors, intentional, which would be a fraud, non-intentional, a mistake, and if it's material, what we talk of whether it's negligence or gross negligence, and at times gross negligence could tantamount to a fraud. So our audit has to be conducted so that the audit risk that we fail to detect that the financial statements could contain some errors which are material is not there. So our audit planning, our audit conduct has all to be geared towards giving the assurance, the reasonable assurance, which is what we are signing the audit report and we are certifying it with a due date. Materiality. And the essay says materiality not just during the planning, but also during the performance of the audit, because you may plan for some materiality levels, But during the course of the audit, you may find that these levels are either too low or too high. And you have to change those materiality levels to the extent of your checks. And materiality is not just on transactional amounts, which we all think materiality may be a number, say a lakh, a crore, or a percentage, 1%, 2%, whatever. Materiality also is as regards classification, as regards presentation, and it's as regards disclosure also. So anything which is wrongly classified or incorrectly classified or presented or not disclosed in full, and it affects the decision making of any individual, that is a mistake. And one needs to be careful that the accounts we sign do not contain that misstatement. Now, what do we do in an auditor's report? Finally, whatever we have at our disposal is the auditor's report. And in an auditor's report, we give an opinion. At the start, it's either a clean opinion or it's a modified opinion. Modified opinion could be either a qualification, it could be a disclaimer, or it could be an adverse opinion, depending. Now, there are two other things we state. In the auditor's responsibility, there is something called the management responsibility which we state. Whether we really check that in the sense that this is the management's responsibility. A lot of people, or almost all, think that that's a factual statement, so they just practice it. So the auditor's report is mostly practiced. We take care that the date is changed, so 24 will become 25. The date of signing is important, and the UL is there. But how many of us actually type out the audit report? And I believe the biggest risk we as auditors face, and we are consciously doing it, and we are responsible, is we don't type out the audit report. If you would have typed it out ourselves, which I do, is I will be conscious of what I'm typing and whether I have really discharged my responsibility and whether the management is really discharging the responsibility, or is it just actual information I'm stating? Or when I'm signing and giving my credibility and my professional career at stake, do I really mean what I'm stating there? Why is it making a format? And while management's responsibility is fine, it's their responsibility. If they are not discharging the responsibility, it may lead to a qualification, and we are qualifying that. Somewhere maybe the question arises whether we state also whether the management has not discharged this responsibility. So somewhere we say that the management is responsible for assessing the entity as a going concern, and we have qualified this for not being a going concern. And ideally, the management who is responsible for the account should have done that. Now, what is the point in actually stating the responsibility when they are not discharged? So somewhere a food for thought is whether we state the management responsible, but also state that they have not discharged their responsibility, as a result of which this has resulted in a modified opinion. That's one part. The second part is the auditor's responsibility, where we state two things, two key things. One, that we have conducted the audit in accordance with the standards of auditing as specified under section 143(10) of the Companies Act. Now, in prospect, whether we have truly conducted the audit in accordance with the standards of auditing. And the institute failed till 2024 that a majority of us were not conducting the audit in accordance with the standards of auditing, and they had 2 hours mandatory CP for standards of auditing, because that was what we were stating. So I've conducted many sessions on standards of auditing. Somebody would feel it's very basic. Yes, it's basic, but it's the very foundation of the audits which we do. And what standards of auditing we read when we gave a CA intermediate or CA final exams? I think most of us have not had a relook at the standards subsequently. And even me, who have spoken on those standards hundreds of times, would not have read the standard 100%. We all do a fast reading. We see something which is in bold or italics, but we really don't see the complete standards. Now, we stating we conducted our audit in accordance with the standards of auditing. And at times when I've spoken, I've asked how many standards of auditing are there. And I've rarely got a unanimous full house stating these are the standards. I don't want to question the audiences here. I assume we know, but assumptions are the mother of all good thoughts. So one is the standards of auditing, very comprehensive, because they are modeled or inspired. It's not a plagiarism. So they are modeled from the international standards of auditing. We've customized, modified, made it tailor-made to an Indian situation, but they are so broad and vast that they cover anything and everything what as an auditor we are supposed to do, and it's in a very simple language. So we can't take shelter that we really don't know what they are. And we ourselves state that we have conducted our audit in accordance with the standards of auditing. So whenever we have issues which we are facing as a profession, from let's say the NFRA or the quality review board, we'll take the standard on the left-hand side. Show me the evidence of having done. And many times, we found nothing there. So the institute has a checklist on standards of auditing which we're supposed to fill. So checklists are all there. So we're talking on checklists, but the checklists are relevant. So even on bank branch audit, there is a checklist which the institute has compiled. It's an Excel utility checklist, a couple of hundred of pages. It's compiled by the Center of Audit Quality. So have a look at it and fill it. I think once it's filled, technically if somebody were to question, you can obviously show in the checklist, this is the checklist which the institute ourselves has designed and you've done it. Now if the checklist is found wanting, you've completed that. Maybe if you are a defendant in a case, whether you can get the institute as a co-defendant is another issue, let's not talk about that, but standards of auditing as prescribed by the institute, if we follow that in letter and spirit, 38 standards, and they all talk of documentation. And I say 230 talks of documentation, but a lot of other standards talk of what is to be done. A very basic SAP 20 materiality. You document what is materiality. And the key issue is we don't document, whereas we may know what is material and we may have conducted our audit in accordance with that materiality norms which we have fixed, but really not documented. Sampling. Whereas we know what sampling we have done, we've really not documented before starting the audit. What is the sample we have chosen? What is the basis? What is SA 530 stating on how one should choose a sample, and this is the sample we have chosen. And The key three standards which actually apply to us generally everywhere. One is SA 315 on risk assessment. And assessing the risks faced by an entity through understanding the entity and the environment in which it operates. So let's say our entity here is the bank. The risk which the bank faces, credit risk, it's lending. And when it's lending, all the processes which come with it, even starting from marketing of loans. If you have people who are marketing your loans and getting a commission, there's a straight conflict of interest because he's interested, the DSA, if it's for a retail loan, the DSA is interested in his commission. So you get n number of people in. And if there are targets which are there, then the credit quality could be compromised. Then the appraisal. What is the quality of credit appraisal? Your sanction, your documentation, your disbursement, your review, monitoring, supervision, your classification of accounts as per IRAC norms, various circulars on advances, management of advances which the regulator RBI would have issued. And then, if the borrower is not paying, then the follow-up for recovery. And then maybe the OTAs, the options. Once the account is closed, handing over the security back to him. In case if it's a gold loan, the security of the gold which is pledged and is in our bank custody, whether that's safe. So a lot of points would flow in a checklist. And how do you prepare a checklist? So while these checklists for me are a good norm, I don't refer to them at the start. I prepare my own checklist. And whenever you prepare a checklist, look at two things. One is the trial balance. And I take a trial balance which is not with only the numbers in. I take a trial balance which contains all the ledger accounts which are open. Because there would be a lot of accounts where there would be movements, but at the end of the financial year, there would be zero. So I would ensure whether these are correctly zero or correctly reflecting a balance which they should reflect. So one is the trial balance. So the trial balance will give me a list of areas which I need to check. Because finally I'm certifying the balance sheet and the PNL. The balance sheet and the PNL moves from the trial balance. So the basics which we were taught when we were first year articles, in trial balance and balance sheet proof karlena, I believe most of us are not doing it. We take the system generated accounts which are presented to us as the absolute gospel. So actually going basically to the books, and then whether the trial balance is actually drawn from the books, and then from the trial balance whether the balance sheet and the PNL are actually drawn from there, because you may have one system for preparing the accounts or transacting. In banks, there might be multiple systems on top of one another. And finally, the balance sheet PNL could be drawn to some other app or tool. So one is proofing, and the second is the organization chart. So any checklist will be prepared basis. Finally, what I'm certifying, the balance sheet and the PNL, which is nothing but assets and liabilities, my income and expenditure, or my revenue and expense. So what can go wrong? Something which is an asset, as basic which I learned in 11th standard, an asset or a liability, or an income or an expense, could be understated or overstated as basic. And there'll be n number of ledger accounts where it will all move. And then you have an organizational chart which will give you a list of employees, either on rolls or off rolls, or outsourced vendors who would be actually working on that. And that's also somewhere related to when you are certifying the internal financial controls or financial reporting. Whether you're going right from the base to what the final end product is, which you're doing an assurance on, so that you don't miss out on any item. And especially why everything will be captured in the books, because as basic as the double entry system of accounting, a debit credit. If there is a debit, there is a credit. And as basic as the rectification of errors, if there is a wrong entry, know what the entry is passed, know what should be the correct entry, and then pass the rectifying entry. If we know fundamentally this concept very strongly and applied in the way we conduct our audit, I think the detection risk would be in control. Now, the second thing we certify, again, Institute had a mandatory 2-hour CP on that, with the code of ethics. And we state in our auditor's report that we have conducted the audit wherein we have complied with the code of ethics. Again, I used to speak a lot on the code of ethics also. Maybe my speaking assignments will get reduced, but that's fine. But it's not mandatory. It's not mandatory. There won't be any sessions on this. But do we really comply with the code of ethics? Another point to introspect. Another basic question when I do a course on code of ethics, then which year is the code of ethics which we are referring? When is it code of ethics 2019, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, this edition? When was the code of ethics last compliant and what is it that? So we know Companies Act 2013. We know that LPR came out in 2020. Which year code of ethics? And when we state we've complied with the code of ethics, ideally we should know. Again, I don't want to question the audience. Which year? It's 2019. How many sections are there? How many pages are there in the code of ethics? You'll be surprised. 999 sections in the code of ethics. And I've spoken on the code of ethics multiple times. And what read the code of ethics to you? Some 320 pages. So again, we are ready of fast reading. So in between the lines, there's really something. I mean, just maybe yes. The number of times I've read. Maybe I may not have missed up anything over maybe 100 times I would have read it, but every time I read it, it's not that I do it start to end and just keep on taking what is necessary or what is not. So 999 sections, again, it starts from 100, so there are 900 sections. Again, one thing which a lot of people don't know, there are 100 sections for members in industry. So the members in industry think the code of ethics is not applicable to them, but it is applicable if they are members of the institute still. A lot of things, if you look at it, I feel the members of industry strictly may not be compliant. Or it's a great moral code of conduct, what members should follow. And code of ethics is all about independence, all about competency. It's all about professional behavior. It's all about confidentiality. And it's all about objectivity. So objectivity is you're free from bias and you give your judgment, your professional judgment with the right blend of skepticism. And in an era where we are living, where frauds are commonplace, SA 240 on frauds and errors, it casts on the auditors the responsibility to ensure that the chances of frauds are minimized. Now, in the short span of time that we do the bank branch audit, and I always say the bank branch audit is being curtailed T20 match. It's not a T20 match also, because we don't get 20 days. The least amount of time which is required for a result in a T20 match is 6 days, and that's what we get at worst or at best. And most of us may not have got the appointments for the current year. So the appointments will come maybe in the last week of March. The branch management will say that our accounts are not ready and we are busy in the finalization. You come only after April. And when it comes, the first thing is say that you should be signing on so and so date, because after this date, I am not there, I am going on leave. My tickets are already booked. Some relative is getting married. If he is not getting married, or he's vacationing somewhere. So, you're just moving backwards. And then the checklist, you see the 100 pages checklist, or the, if you're saying essay, the essay checklist also with the institute has prepared. It's the source. So what do we do? Ideally. And there is one report which we are supposed to give or submit in the bank branch audit is the long form audit report. And the long form audit report is a big questionnaire on various items, advances being the most voluminous, and then your various items. So the point is, you have the trial balance, you have the balance sheet and the P&L, you are doing a latest scrutiny, you are verifying each and every item of the asset and the liability, whether it is there for completeness and existence. So if it's a cash on hand, you will verify whether the cash on hand is there. If it's a bank balance, you check for the original bank statement for reconciliation. You might, post certain days, actually go and see if the bank is there and maybe cross verify whether there is an account here or it's not a manipulated account. Then you have the advances. Again, earlier whatever advances this we were given, you used to assume that these advances are there. But we have another issue here where publicly there is a bank on record which is on bust, where there were two sets of books prepared. One, when there were actual loans given, and one where some dummy advances were put up to cover up. So again, advances, you need to see the documentation, you need to maybe ask for confirmation, or you might need to rely on the stock inspections, or maybe go do one or two surprise inspections to see whether the borrowers are really there, or they are not dummy borrowers. Maybe there would be dummy borrowers where somebody else would have borrowed on somebody else's behalf. There will be money used, there will be beneficial owners, but advances. investments may not be there in a bank branch. And again, investments need to be marked to market. Then you have other assets. You have your security deposits, you have your receivables, you have your fixed assets. And in most of the branches, the depreciation is not charged when the asset is put to use. The depreciation commences when the last payment is made. So you have cases where depreciation itself is not proper. And other assets, the security items, deposits, whether you have record of those deposits or you don't even know whether the deposits are refundable or not. Receivables, whether they are actually to be received, if they are old aging entries, then suspense accounts, center office accounts on which RBI also wants us to have the focus. And then on the liability side, apart from your reserves, the capital will be at the head office. Then your borrowings. And that's if they are there. And then you have your deposits, which is the major chunk on the liability side, either your savings account, current account, or the fixed deposits. And then you have one more risk of the money laundering risk. And that's where you need to know the KYC, know your customer, not just the KYC, know the customer's business, KYCB, and KYCP is know the customer's transactions. And if the transactions are suspicious, maybe you issue something called an STR. There is a set process for identifying the transaction as suspicious. There will be parameters which will be laid. And based on that parameters, the system will throw alerts. And based on those alerts, the compliance officer of the branch, or if it's centralized, the compliance team will review those transactions. If those transactions are found to be in order, they do something what is known as whitewashing the transactions, and for the balance transactions, they would inform the FIU that these transactions are suspicious. They do not intimate the borrower whether that's done. You will have classification of accounts as high, medium, low, so whether that's done. You will have dormant accounts, inoperative accounts. You will have accounts which have been asked to be frozen by law enforcement authorities. You would have debt claims, you would have nominations, you would have money. Again, a risk area where debt claim settlements have been done at various banks, branches where signatures have been forged, manipulated. And you have diversion of funds, you have cycling of funds, you have money mules, beneficial owners. So all kinds of risks will be there apart from frauds in advance. So the borrower would have submitted manipulated accounts. The borrower would have submitted inflated invoices. Old trick, old formula still being played out now, where the bank gives you money on a debt equity of say 3:1, where 75% would be the bank lending, 25% would be your contribution. So वो invoice ही inflate कर दो कि पूरा पैसा बैंक से ले लो, end use के लिए उसको पैसे दे दो, उससे जो भी cash में ले लो या however whatever you settle, you will get a CA to certify. This due date now. Earlier, even the CA certificates were forced. I've known many cases where letterheads of chartered accountants I've seen in older times at the borrower's office, and they're never even afraid to even hide them or keep it under some person. Scans were there, You can print the letterhead, you can print the stamp, you can forge his signature, or you need not even copy him. Who's bound to cross check. So that's where the unit came in as a preventive fraud deterrent. So you have all those items, your checklist will all be derived from that. Finally, your purpose. If your purpose is to give a true and fair view and see it is free from material misstatements, then your checklist will all derive from that and maybe the off chart who's doing what. So there will be
What to do? Because short time for rank out.
I will come to that. So in a given short time, my time is fixed. What do I do? Either I increase the number of resources, I increase the number of quality resources who would take less time for the job. I would do my homework well in advance and know where to attack. Or I would look into areas which are material. So what would impact the balance sheet? A balance sheet signing in a bank branch should ideally not take more than 3 days. The main MOCs which are passed or the main qualifications have traditionally been on accounts which are identified as NPs. And with the automation of the NPA system, the divergence is much lesser. Unless there is a manual intervention or unless the drop over has wrongly been fed in, unless the stock statements show a wrong picture of stocks, that is, ideally you should give the DQ on paid stocks. You're not considering creditors, or you are valuing stocks at market value. So if there is, or if maybe the renewal actually has not taken place, but somebody has gone in the system and said that the account is renewed. Or maybe the moratorium would have been changed in the system and somebody would just be changing the date. So unless there is a manual intervention, so if you know exactly what is to be done, what are the key areas to be focused on, not just in a bank branch audit, in any audit, the material areas where there could be material misstatements could be taken care first. Fixed assets, whether they are actually there, they are in a working condition, or whether they are impaired. Deposits, whether they are actually there. So finally, your focus will all be on the asset side. Because if the asset is not there, there will be an impairment and you'll have to provide. On the liability side, yes, if the liability is wrongly stated, if that liability needs to be written back. So it will be a balance sheet audit, as we call the balance sheet correctly derived from the trial balance. The substance accounts, the reconciliations, the inter-office adjustments, the aging, whether that aging needs a provisioning. So detailed ledger scrutiny of something which is material, you finish off the balance sheet, which is not the biggest risk now. Yes, there are risks where the balance sheet is not correctly stated because of a lot of issues. But the Reserve Bank of India is more worried on issues like money laundering, issues where there are frauds due to intentional manipulation of accounts, maybe it could be due to evergreening or window dressing, So you have a sudden surge in deposits at the year end. And you have people who have fixed deposits have suddenly taken loans against fixed deposits and withdrawn their balances. A lot of managers phoning customers, FD है, additional FD ले लो, FD से लोन उठाओ, at least 31st March को मेरा inflate करो. It pleases the auditors also because their fees are based on advances. So if people are taking loans against fixed deposit, that's the easiest thing to do. But if there is a significant deviation from deposits at the last 10 days or so, and subsequently there is a fall, so clear-cut window dressing which you will need to highlight. So need to know what can go wrong, and risk is something which can go wrong, which can go wrong anytime, maybe sometimes, or every time. So one needs to know what risk is there, risk of misstatement and the risk of frauds. So the LAPR becomes a very key document. And the LAPR itself has a questionnaire, so it serves as a checklist that this is what you need to check to answer. Now, do we get time from that if you really answer this? Now, I think one gentleman said that we should give a reasonable assurance. The institute never prescribes us giving an absolute assurance. In fact, the LAPR needs a limited assurance. In the limited time we do the audit, we need to give a limited assurance. So the first thing one should do is in a bank branch audit with limited time, as sir has asked the question is, give a limited assurance, especially in the LAPR. Your communication has to be factual on what you did, how you did, and to what extent you did. So, the LAPR is a question, it asks questions. And it asks questions on systems and processes. Does the system in the bank, is there a process? Have your test checks revealed? Now, when the question is, does the system, you need to check the system. You can't answer without checking the system. And your test checks revealed, you need to do a test check. As per the policies and procedures of the bank, you can only answer the question if you know what the policies and procedures are and you have read them. And you have known what is applicable and whether that what is applicable has been adhered. So unless you have not read it, how can you answer? And we answer generally in yes, no, or not applicable. And that's again a very big risk we take. I don't know. I always feel the CAs are the biggest risk takers. We ideally should be de-risk first, but we are the biggest risk takers when we know we should give reasonable assurance, maximum, and best is limited assurance. Why are we saying yes in giving an absolute assurance? Yes. We don't like saying no. And if we say no, we are very happy because no and not applicable are things where the CA is the most happy because it reduces his work. The question is not applicable based on what the management has stated. No, this is not applicable, we are not doing it. Have you corroborated? Because you can't assume and presume. When I was doing my articles, the first year article, my third year article, who was my senior, had given me 1 month that I mean, I still remember, and I don't know who had given him. He said, when you conduct an audit, Or when you are a chartered accountant student, even in God you don't trust, because he will not come and help you while writing your exam. You have to help yourself. You have to study. Work hard, study hard, and write your papers. Finally, it's what you have written is what matters. So you may have done the audit very well, like you would have read for your exams very well, you would have prepared very hard, but unless it is not reflected on the answer paper, there is no use. It's all in your mind. Nobody is going to read your mind. The same way, whatever you may have done the audit, you may have done it very well, you may have followed all the standards, but unless it is documented and evidence, you would be a sitting target for the NFI. And that's where we are finding a lot of cases, because earlier they were not going in for checks. And I'm again saying that NFI would still not be going in depth. If they go slightly in depth, practically they would have every second chartered accountant not complying with the standards. The standards state a lot of things. We are happy when we qualify an account, when we pass an MOC. The point is, my SA 705 says that there is a procedure for qualification. And the procedure is that you need to give a reasonable opportunity to the management of being heard. So if there is a qualification, you need to state that this is the qualification I intend to do, and I want your response why the qualification should not be given. But before the qualification, I would like you to modify the accounts and state the true and fair view instead of me qualifying. I have to wait for their response. If I agree, it's fine. If I don't agree, I have to give a rejoinder stating I don't agree. Give me a final response. Otherwise, either you change your account or I qualify. Are we following that? If there's a qualification as a peer reviewer, I'll check to me the correspondence for the qualification. Show me your reply to the management. And there is one essay. I don't know whether we know it. It is communication of internal control deficiencies to those charged with governance. Now, who's those charged with governance? And who's managing? Do we really know? And as they say, those charged with governance would be the board. Management will be the TMT, who's the CEO, CFO, or the company secretary. I had a lot of times, and this is not for a bank or branch audit, because the bank branch audit, the TMT is only the bank branch head. So you have to write only to him. In case it's a bank issue, you may escalate it further to the zonal head or the regional head. You may also communicate it to the central statutory auditor. But when you do an audit, our standards are very clear. Are you communicating it to the management or to those charged with governance? And I have seen normally our communication is to the financial controller or to our immediate SPOC. And what responses we get are from him, not from the management, not from those charged with governance. Whereas ideally our standard says we should communicate with those charged with governance or with the management. SA 5 talks on representations, and the checklist have all SA 5. Have you obtained a representation? Is the representation comprehensive? Now, one is, have you got a representation? And a lot of times we may not get a representation from banks. And if you have not got a representation, then have we qualified our audit report to that extent in the auditor's responsibility? We conducted our audit in accordance with the standards of auditing, except for SA 580, wherein we have asked for representation from the management, but the management has not given us the representation. Then SA 580 says in case a scenario where the management has not given you the representation, then have you factored in and has your professional skepticism increased so that you do additional checks and balances to ensure that it does not vitiate the fluent statement? Now, representation, if you have given, doesn't mean the representations are the gospel truth. Representations also have to be confirmed and corroborated. It's not the primary source of evidence. Again, we have audit evidence as a standard of auditing. What should be evidence? And then we have SC 315. We talked about what are the risks we face. We have SC 330, which talks of auditors' response to assess risk. And when I'm talking of auditors' response to assessment, this is all the controls. And in any organization or in a bank, especially in a bank, the controls would be the maker checker. It will be segregation of duties. It will be staff rotation. A stamp, we all know, was discovered only when there was a rotation of duty. So maker checker, segregation of duties, staff rotation, reconciliations, verifications, authorizations, ratifications. They would all be something which we need to check. Have we really checked this? We stated we have conducted the audit. In accordance with the standard of audit. A question which is said is members are waiting for the checklist on standard of audit or the checklist on how to conduct the management audit. And the counter itself, there was a book. That's good enough. The institute has come up with a utility, which is good enough. There is a checklist also on standards of auditing, which is great enough. When there is something ready-made which is there, why should I reinvent the wheel? Now, I really don't know why you asked me the question, because at the start itself, I said I will prepare my own checklist. And the checklist is prepared. I'll repeat because I feel what I've said has not been understood. Otherwise, this question would not have come. And he said members are waiting, so he's not sending one member. He's talking of the larger member who's attending. A checklist is always based on what is your end deliverable. And a checklist, at worst, you can always follow what the institute has given you, but I never follow it. I would use it at the end just to cross-check whether I'm not missed out on anything, or I'm checking, but my checklist will always be more comprehensive than the institute would give. What is my risk? The trial balance, moving to the balance sheet and the P&L, the profit or the loss being correctly or incorrectly stated, the asset or the liability being overstated or understated. So my entire checklist will be derived on how do I prove a particular item. My long-form audit report is a comprehensive checklist. Do I have the time to prepare a checklist and somebody said, how do I do in the 6 days? अगर ये मैं नहीं कर सकता हूँ, ये मैं yes no not applicable दे रहा हूँ, when I should state for yes what I did, how I did, to what extent I did. If I'm saying no, I'm not stating what basis I'm stating no. If I'm stating not applicable, I'm not stating on what basis I've stated it's not applicable. Have I actually verified it? So my answers to the LHR, which is the main document. As I said, the balance sheet audit can be done in 3 days. We all know how to do a balance sheet audit effectively. And we all know whether the balance sheet gives a true and fair view. And we all know which items to check in a balance sheet. In a bank branch audit, it will be only NPAs. And if we master the IRAC norms, With automation, there would be any. So the balance sheet side of audit, simple. The bank has n number of certifications. The bank has the LFAR. And the key is the LFAR. And again, I say we are the biggest risk takers as chartered accountants. The bravest of the brave. The LFAR is a document where we have to answer on the systems and processes of the bank branch for the entire year. We have to comment on the systems and processes in the branch for the entire year. And how many days are we in the branch for the year? I doubt any auditor has been in the branch in Feb. And none. Maybe a minuscule percentage would be there in the first half of March. Some in the last week of March. Most post March. In the next week. So how can we comment on the checklist which is given as a questionnaire to answer on the systems and processes in the branch for the year? So the question, there's one basic question at the start on cash. And I'm taking cash always because cash is simplest. Unless there are times where 120 crores gets siphoned off in some branches without the auditors not knowing or not qualifying. I fail to believe. So what is reported will always not be true. There was a bank which I audited for a number of years and it was constantly coming in news for a fraud of an amount which in its lifetime it had never achieved as advances. So I fail to understand where this figure came from. Cash. Is the cash in effective joint custody of branch officials throughout the year? Basically. And what do we answer? Yes. Basis क्या है? अरे आप तो थे ही नहीं साल भर, तो आपको क्या सपना आया कि वो था? किस बेसिस पे आप यस बोल रहे हो? So when you are saying yes, you modify your answer with what? So finally, why are we saying yes? Because we did a verification in, let's say, March 31st or April 1st, and we found there is somebody who's opening the vault, दूसरा कोई cashier है, so dual custody is there when we were there in the branch, which is not there for the year we are answering. So first is, my answer should be, we verified the cash on a random basis on so and so date, and on that date, the cash was in effective joint custody. We have verified the cash register or the key register, and we have found that the initials of the officials who are in custody of the cash is there. In case somebody is going on leave, then the handover is there in the key handover register. We have also verified the concurrent audit reports, and the concurrent auditors have also stated that cash has been in effective joint custody, and there have been no adverse issues specifically reported by the concurrent auditors. I will even add that they have stated yes, they have also specifically not stated any adverse features. Apart from that, the bank manager has given us a representation that cash has been held in effective joint custody throughout the year. Based on the above, nothing has come nothing has come to my knowledge and belief, or nothing has come to my knowledge which causes me to believe that the cash has not been held in effective joint custody. So I will give her limited assurance. And the biggest takeaway, if you can take, is please answer yes with a modification. What you did, how you did, and to what extent you did. There's another question. Does the system of the bank, so it talks of a system. Which system? You don't even say which system, you're saying yes. The system of the bank. Which system? Is the system which the branch manager has told you verbally? Is it the system as per the policies and procedures of the bank which have been shared by you, which have been shared with you? Now, is that system and policy which is there is updated? So you bank manager may give you some circular, say the credit policy 2024. We are in 2025. Has that credit policy been updated? And have you seen the updated circular? So if you are stating something based on certain document which has been stated to you, then my answer to the question will be very specific. Based on my verification of the credit policy issued on so and so date and further circulars so and so which are maybe they may be available in the bank intranet or which have been, if there are some 3-4 circulars, I specifically state the number or the date of that circular, and based on these checks of these policies, procedures, and based also on the representation that these are the only applicable circulars to this area, we state. So I am appropriately modifying my answer based on what I did. If I state yes, the system indicates, and if you don't know the system or if there is any other system or if there is a fraud, and the bank manager has concealed a lot of things from you, or it's not that he is not concealed, you never asked for it, and he didn't give it. So yes, no, not applicable. Please modify that appropriately. What you did, how you did, to what extent you did. And that's being factual. Now, there was somebody yesterday when I spoke. I said that if you have this questionnaire, where unfortunately the answers are shorter than the questions. Maybe we want to talk of 3x, 5x, 10x, whatever, x growth. So our answer has to be at least directly answering the question. If the question is in A, B, C, 3 questions, you answer each one separately based on what you did, how you did, to what extent. And you see that if you are almost in all the cases, we are answering as yes, no, not applicable. But in cases where we answer, as a central statutory auditor, when I reviewed the SARs, I found that either we've answered A and C, not D, we've answered B or C, or we've answered only either A, B, C. Or in many cases, we've even answered D, which was not the question. Again, on what basis? I really don't know. So, point is very basic. Now, this brings me to another issue. Who's actually compiling it? Is it our articles? Is it a rank junior chartered accountants and I don't date them? And And in the standards of auditing, audit quality, SA 220, we say there is a engagement partner and there is a quality reviewer. Are we actually having a quality review which we state in a standard of auditing compliance? And there is something called SQC1. Which SQC1 we have to follow uniformly across. So are we adhering to that audit quality of checks and balances? We talk of maker checker at the bank. Is there a maker checker at our audit level itself? Or is it just a maker and just a signer? And there have been cases where we've stated in the long form audit report that any other issue which you would like to bring to the attention of the central statutory auditor is stated. And the time is very short. In the short time, it's not possible for us to conduct the audit. So please ensure next time that we are given additional time. When you are writing and the time is short, next time you want additional time, how do you manage this time? Is it you sign just for the sake of signing? Or you have mitigated the risk, knowing fully where the risk is that the time is short. And time is short not just for a bank audit, time is short for all audits. Either you don't get the data on time, you will get the wrong data, or you will get partial data. And based on whatever you get, you raise any queries, you will either receive partial responses or you will get incorrect responses. And technically in a bank branch audit, the key personnel will be on leave. So challenges are there. Now if there is something material, as a result, you can't give a true and fair view. I think escalate from day one. Escalate it to the central statutory auditors from day one. Always in a bank branch audit, the numbers are there. The numbers of the regional offices, the numbers of the zonal offices are there. All them also personally, plus keep it on record through a mail. So if your data request, which has to be sent to the branch officials, should be ready if you know you are getting a bank branch audit. Either it can be compiled from what you did for the last year, or there are enough checklists available on what you should ask for. And enough checklists in this booklet which is given. In the Excel utility tool which the institute has derived, and the institute wants most of the members to follow that utility tool. In the standard of auditing checklist, it's again the institute has derived. And I've been a member of those committees and have some role to play there. So the checklist is there. Just download it from the institute website. It's there. But the question is, how do you fill it? And have you asked for the data appropriately at the right time? In fact, on day one, even before you shake hands with the branch manager and you have the customary fee, issue him that list of requirements which you need and working backwards, keeping a margin of safety of number of days for getting the data and verifying and ensuring your rewards are satisfactorily answered. If none of them are coming, escalate immediately. So on day 0, I have my checklist ready. The moment I get the appointment letter, I converse with them, we have appointed with focus, my checklist is already made to him. I've already told him that when I approach the audit and when I've set my foot on the branch, please have these details checked. So like वो चाय पीने वाला चाय नहीं मुझे चेकलिस्ट भेजी है मुझे डिटेल्स दे दो पहले चाय तो हो जाएगी और मैं चाय पीना जब भी चेकलिस्ट मिलती है मेरे डेटा मिल रहा है उसके बाद चाय पिएंगे मैं तो मैं चाय नहीं पीता If at day one, end of the day, you don't get any of the data, just put in there, this is what we want, this is what we want, this is what is not. And also ask when you will give me the data. So keep on updating that mail with additional every day. If you find on day 3 that you might reach the date because data not coming, keep the central statutory auditor in the loop as well as the regional head on day 4 or 5. If substantial data is still not coming, then from day 6, I would mark the mail to the regional office or the zonal office sitting the branch in CC was now you are not needed. You fail to do your responsibility, I am bypassing you, I am going to your boss. I also write to the central secretary separately, मेरे को data नहीं मिल रहा है, I might disclaim. So please use your good books or your influence to ensure I get the data. Because the central statutory auditors also have a deadline. And a lot of time the data which is not coming, if you escalate it to the senior authorities, you get the data. Or if you escalate it to the central statutory auditors, they'll speak with the central authorities and they'll ensure you get the data. So you need to do a self-help. The right documentation. And if you need to disclaim, because lack of data, you have trail mails for all the 10, 12 days which you were there, then sufficient evidence is there, the auditee cannot cry. And I was never asked the data which you are asking. So there will be cases when if you're not created the documentation, the branch manager will always say that I was never asked for, so I didn't give. Now, another beauty of our audits is the respect is only there as long as you are useful. And your use is till the date you sign. The moment you sign, maybe depending on the quality of your issues, you'll be served with the quality of the food. So अगर काजू बादाम खाने हैं, तो you have to show your work. Otherwise, चाय नहीं मिलेगी. Concurrent auditor को वो भी नहीं मिलेगी. Statutory auditor को मिलेगी because he's valid, he's qualified, pass an MOC. If you raise some questions, then always be a pushback. Last year को उसने कुछ पूछा है कि आप क्या पूछ रहे हो? आपने कभी बैंक ऑडिट किया है? मैंने बैंक ऑडिट ही किया है. उसका पता नहीं. So, and there are cases where I've been given bank branch audits. And I said last year we signed in 1 day. So I give you maximum of 2 दिन में sign करो. वो मैं decide करूँ. आपको नहीं. And I've qualified this for various issues. And I'm not got the appointment the next year. That's fine. I think we need to be courageous. We need to be brave to call a spade, not to take, not to be courageous or brave in taking the wrong risk decisions and communicating an absolute assurance where a limited assurance also needs introspection. Then on frauds. The question which I'm preempting is that in the limited time, if we can't check normal accounts for the LFR, and again the LFR says that this is only illustrative. Is there any other areas you can add on? So frauds. There is something which we state in the auditor's report, because that's the only Brahmastra we have at our disposal. We have nothing else. The accounts are of the management, they can do whatever, and they don't want to change. And in part of 30th and उन्होंने जो भेज दिया, they don't change. They say whatever तुमको करना है तुम MOC में करो. MOC they refuse to sign. It's fine. I will anyway qualify. I read the MOC, I will qualify. In the management responsibility, state a lot of things, and they actually done those things. So again, coming back, this is where I need to again introspect and put. Now, management is responsible for the accounts. Management is responsible for maintaining the documentation. Management is responsible for everything. So prevention, detection, mitigation, controls, containment of frauds is whose responsibility. Primarily. So when we ask them, how will you discharge your responsibility in any audit which you have done? Forget bank audit. Have you first made a fraud policy? Yes, most of the banks will do it. But mandate because there is a risk committee mandatory by RBI, there is a FMR 1, 2, 3 details to file with the Reserve Bank. So there will be a fraud policy. Now that will be at the bank level. Branch level is इसको पता है क्या fraud policy है. So you are building a branch. Is there a fraud policy available at the branch level? First question, checklist. So this is my checklist. Is there a fraud policy available at the branch level? Is the fraud policy available and read by the bank officials? Have the bank officials understood what is their responsibility and accountability as per the fraud policy? What are their do's and don'ts? So have they compiled a fraud risk register, a fraud risk universe, a fraud library, which will give the entire fraud scenarios which are likely to happen? And in almost all the banks, 101%, you will not find any fraud risk register. So the first thing you do is to state that there is no fraud risk register in the branch. Then, are there any fraud risk trainings done? You'll find that there are no fraud risk trainings done. Simple. So one, fraud risk scenarios are not identified. Fraud risk trainings are not done. Now, when fraud risk scenarios are not identified, how will you map the controls in place to mitigate the frauds? So one, what are you stating? Fraud policy है, but branch में किसने पढ़ी? Evidence नहीं है पढ़ने का, वो हमने पढ़ी, evidence देखा हमने. While we have been informed that a fraud risk policy is there, available on the bank's intranet, and it has been read and understood by all the bank employees, as confirmed to us by the branch head orally, there is nothing on record which evidences that this is actually the case. One. Second, a fraud risk register capturing the possible scenarios of fraud which are likely to take place in the bank have not been captured. Fraud controls to mitigate, contain, minimize the fraud risks are thus not documented, and the fraud risk scenarios itself are not identified. Fraud risk trainings are not in place. Basis the above, we are not in a position to state whether the bank can prevent or detect frauds if they happen. Are we stating anything false if we state this? Why are we not stating? I think if you even write this, how much would it minimize your chances of being in some jail if a fraud were to happen? At least bail तो मिलेगा immediately. आपने तो सीधा दिखा इनकी रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी है, इन्होंने कुछ किया ही नहीं, मैं तो डिस्क्लेमर दे रहा हूँ, मेरा ड्यूटी नहीं है फ्रॉड डिटेक्ट करना. I'm not a Rottweiler. I'm not a bloodhound. I'm a Pomeranian. Yes. My professional skepticism is high. The frauds can happen. And that's why I'm saying they will happen. Because these guys have no systems in place to prevent fraud or detect fraud. My duty is to give a true and fair view about the financial statements. के ऊपर मैं नहीं था. But अगर borrower inflated stock statements दे रहा है, अगर borrower की balance sheet बच है, अगर उसने project inflate करके margin लाया ही नहीं, अगर all shipping documents, creditors list, debtors list, stocks are not stated as cost or realizable value whichever is lower, if there is no system within the bank itself, the branch, to prevent this, how am I supposed to detect this? You do a forensic investigation. Or you ask the central statutory auditor to qualify the main NSR appropriately. So when I state this, I'm asked a question. Am I not doing my duty by stating this? Am I running away? I said, as far as I'm concerned, I'm concerned. But are you? And this is the question when I ask, and I'm asked this question, so I ask those who ask me the question, when I'm stating nothing about frauds, what is the big risk I'm taking? We all know frauds can happen. We all know we are at a risk if a fraud happens, because frauds are mostly detected by tips. Frauds are mostly detected through a whistleblower mechanism. That day there was a news which is going on of some actress in the south who's caught. There's some 14 kilos of gold bars, and it's not that she's doing it for the first time. She would have done it, I don't know, but she had visited, they said, Dubai 30 times in a year, 4 times in the last 1 month, and carrying 14 kilos of gold. Right? So this is there. The question is, frauds can happen. And there is a cockroach theory of frauds. And that theory says when you see a cockroach, especially a small cockroach, the chances there be many cockroaches around. So if you detect something like a red flag, which RBI has specifically mandated, you see whether there are early warning signal system in place and there are red flag accounts. If such system is not there, please state so there's no system to give an early warning signal that a fraud may take place. There's no system to red flag accounts where there could be frauds. So in God we don't trust. The rest we disclaim. Audit का टाइम ही नहीं है ना, उसकी ड्यूटी है, हम मैनेजमेंट रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी दे रहे हैं, वो तो हमको इंस्टीट्यूट ने राइट दिया है, इसकी रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी वो नहीं कर रहा है, तो वी आर ओनली स्टेटिंग इज नॉट डिस्चार्जिंग रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी एज फार एज फ्रॉड प्रिवेंशन, फ्रॉड मिटिगेशन, फ्रॉड कंट्रोल इज देयर. Money laundering, KYC, KYCB, KYCP, risk classification of accounts, बेसिक अकाउंट ओपनिंग फॉर्म में पीछे एक फाइनेंशियल इंफॉर्मेशन का पेज रहता है। जिंदगी में किसी बैंक ने वो किसी बॉरोवर से फिल करके लिया ही नहीं, या लिया है तो कभी वेरीफाई नहीं किया उसके फाइनेंशियल इंफॉर्मेशन से। तो हाउ विल दे नो द ट्रांजैक्शन इज सस्पिशियस और नॉट एट द बेसिक लेवल। वो स्टूडेंट है, वो आके कहता है उसने अकाउंट खोला, वो सीए बन गया, वो सीए को बन गया, बट स्टिल इन द सिस्टम इज अपडेटेड एज अ स्टूडेंट। तो उसको सडनली 2 लाख रुपए की सैलरी आ गई, इट बिकम्स अ सस्पिशियस ट्रांजैक्शन। So if your records are not updated, if you are not getting the right information, I think this is where, as a process, you need to check. And then the role of concurrent auditors. I think we rely a lot on concurrent auditors without looking at the corresponding essay which says that you can't blindly rely on the work of another auditor unless you have tested him for competency, unless you have had meetings with him. And I found n number of cases during the course of my statutory branch audit where I found issues with the concurrent auditor as just stated not applicable, like STRs. STRs would be there on the branch. They may be filed centrally, but there are STRs applicable at the branch. So he has to get the data or disclaim that this is not done at the branch level, this is done at the central level, and we have not been given the data, and this is outside my scope. But those things are not applicable. Exactly, STRs don't apply. How will STRs not apply? If a branch is doing transactions, which it does, there will be STRs. If they are nil, I need to correctly assess if there is a nil STR, it needs to be filed. So at times, if you find the concurrent auditors doing something incorrect, please tell them at least to correct it in their March report. Because otherwise, your LFAR will be at a deviation with what they have stated. And the bank should not issue them notices. At times, we stated certain things. We discussed with the concurrent auditors to please change your March report, at least, because 11 report they have stated something which is completely untrue. And they refuse to do it. We all have egos. And subsequently, the bank issued them a notice. And they blamed us for, imagine, how can I be blamed? I am doing my duty. I am not telling the bank to file a case against you or do whatever. But I gave you enough opportunities to correct. The next is the statutory audit reports which we get. And even in this era, we find bankers who just don't rely on those reports. They rely more on the collateral or they rely on the capital. They say we are experts in judging a human and we can make out whether he pay or not pay. Fine. But the fact that they don't rely on the financial statement, which is not quite encouraging for us. And there is something which chartered accountants certify in the cargo, whether the borrower is in default. And in any bank branch audit which you are doing as a concurrent auditor, or as a bank branch auditor, you just compare cases where you have your SMA 0, 1, 2, and SMA 0 is a default from 0 to 30. SMA 1, 31 to 60, SMA 2, 60 to 90, and over 90 is a certified defaulter, NP. So any SMA account also would be a defaulter and would find a mention in the cargo as he's in default. So you sync the NPAs with what the chartered accountant has stated in cargo, and you in many cases not find a mention of the default when he's clearly in default. And he was in default even in the last year, which the 24 accounts would be there. To help fellow chartered accountants, I have called them personally, informing and told them this is what his accounts are NPA here. We are classifying as NPAs, obviously they are certified defaulters, yeah. आप उसको क्लीन शीट क्यों दे रहे हो? अगर एक बेसिक एक्सरसाइज किसी ने किया, एनएफआरए ने किया, बैंक से डिफॉल्टर लिस्ट ली और उनकी बैलेंस शीट ली और कारो चेक किया और किसी को विधायक आंकड़े की जो एनपीएस है या एसएमएस है और वो सीएजेड सर्टिफाई नहीं किए इन कारो, issue notices to them. I don't know how many notices we will be facing. So again, Karo checklist. Here, it's not on the checklist. It's on how we reply to the checklist that matters. So again, a Karo checklist is there by the institute, and institute ने काफी कुछ कहकर ज़्यादा ही किया. कारो की checklist भी नहीं है, implementation guide भी है, FAQs भी है, अभी ये utility list भी ला. So we have no excuse and we are not having the resources at our disposal now. If the risk reward ratio is not favorable, then whether we have the risk appetite under the audit, and I think the president last year clearly went on record and saying if you don't have the risk appetite, please don't accept the audit. So we have started accountants diverting to other areas. Statutory audits, especially bank branch responsibility is huge. So we have to be accountable for what we do. So simple, end. Look before you leave. Whatever you are doing, you do it with conscious eyes. Whenever in doubt, you ask for help. And never give absolute assurance, never give even reasonable assurance in an LFAR. Give a limited assurance. And as far as frauds is concerned, please be factual and distinct. Thank you. So as a part of the Professional Speakers Association of India, where I'm the only chapter president, it's fundamental obligation that even if you're not started on time, you end on time. So same applies in a building branch audit. You may start it anytime. You're bent on the due date. Otherwise, there will be no date. If you've forgotten anything, if you go back after your signing is there, I believe the security guard will also not allow you to tell who are you and why you coming. So as long as we have not signed, I think we have all the power. So let's utilize that effectively and efficiently.
Thank you, sir. So we have the formal checklist which is prescribed by the institute. The publication of WIRC is there available with us. Cost is 150. We've kept a token amount of 50 rupees. So you can collect it on payment from outside. To propose a formal vote of thanks, I call upon our Deputy Convener, CA Kailash Karnataka.
It is indeed a great honor for me to propose the vote of thanks for today's enlightening session. Friends, first of all, मैं ये कहना चाहूँगा कि we CA are very laborious and risk oriented. मेहनत करना और रिस्क वहन करना ये हमारी आदत में शामिल है, क्योंकि अंकों से खेलना हमारी पहचान है, नियम और कानून हमारी जान है। ऑडिट करने की राह में मुश्किलें कितनी भी हो सही, मगर हमें मेहनत करने की पहचान है। On this word, I extend my heartfelt gratitude to our esteemed speaker, CA Abhijit Sangiri, for his enlightening and detailed presentation. Sir, your expertise, practical approach, and in-depth analysis have provided us valuable guidance in ensuring an effective and efficient bank branch audit, including all audit. क्योंकि मैं ये कहना चाहूंगा कि ज्ञान का दीपक हम जलाते रहेंगे, हर गलती से हम कुछ सीखते रहेंगे। यहाँ आए हैं तो कुछ नया जरूर समझेंगे और अपनी सफलता की राह हम खुद चुनेंगे। Request you to be our leader.
Checklist can be.
Our next speaker is already there.
So this